And what a start to the FA Cup for Liverpool. Welcome to the post-match reaction from American Scouser TV. It's Timuchin and it's John with us. The very definition of a smash and grab, but we don't care because we're into the next round and Arsenal aren't. Timuchin, how did you find the game?
Man, that was a tough watch at times, right? Especially the first half. But for I don't know, you can't beat the results. And with all that's missing, when you look at it in terms of like the squad that finished that game and what's missing out there, that's pretty darn impressive. But really more of a disastrous result for Arsenal, I think, than like a ridiculous result for us.
John, we have the same word in our little below name
Yes.
description things. That really was a game of not just for Liverpool, a game of pure mentality, but a damning indictment, I say, on Mikel Arteta and how he manages his squad, because that was almost his first team, and yet our kids still looked like they were playing like they looked like an Italian 1980s, 1990s team. They were quite willing to soak up the pressure, knowing that they had enough resources up front to break. But it really was just a game of will over technique, wasn't it?
By the way, you referenced a decade that John over here was not even being thought about by his parents yet.
Well, there's this new thing. It's called the internet, guys. Like I can come back and have a look, every now and then. But yeah, Mac, it was really. I didn't come into this game expecting we'd win. That's why I didn't catch the first half. I did some errands. I did everything else but watch the game. When I saw it was 0-0 at halftime, I was like, we're still in this. Looking at that team. Looking who we have coming off the bench, Diogo Jota and Ryan Gravenberch was really good, by the way. Got that foul drawn. Just saying. Yeah, I felt like we had a chance when it was 0-0. And yeah, I do agree. It's a pretty damning indictment for Mikel Arteta because we didn't have our best player. We didn't have Salah. We didn't have our captain. We didn't have Virgil. And we have quite a few injuries. We don't have Endo. We don't have Robertson, right? So we're pretty depleted. Like this is possibly our strongest team now. Right, but it's definitely kind of a tier below what Arsenal have, and definitely questions have to be asked on their end, considering the number of chances that they had. But overall, man, I'm not complaining. Like game's the game. You don't take your chances. We did. We advance. That's how it is.
Just to bring kind of one technical point up to Muchin, but not something that we need to dwell on. But in terms of consistency of mentality and in terms of focus and concentration, we probably wouldn't have said this 2 months ago, but the absence of Endo in terms of the mentality, the how he anchors the mentality of the midfield was really obvious today with McAllister in his place, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know you lose that defensive attitude, but to be fair, you are missing Van Dijk. So that is a huge factor in there as well. Konate was unbelievable, by the way, today. And Kwanzaa was solid. I mean, had a couple of moments where it was just like, but you definitely lose a lot. The difference, I think, is when Van Dijk is there, right? Endo does not have to be involved in the build-up and stuff as much because we can move that ball around in the back and look for like the diagonal from Van Dijk, and he's part of that build-up. Today, when you have Kwanzaa there, now McAllister has to come back. I mean, the thing that got Endo in trouble in the beginning was being caught on the ball during that build-up. Well, now McAllister had a couple of those moments because he almost has to do something with it because there is no build-up coming from the back. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison. We'll know more like when he plays with Van Dijk again. But yeah, I mean, you are definitely right in saying 2-3 months ago, when we were talking January, we were concerned only about Mo. And that was like literally the only concern. Now, because of some of the injuries and stuff as well, of course, obviously Endo is going to be, and due to his form, it's going to be a big loss over there. But hey, man, I mean, it's January, won another game, and it's just going to keep going. Before you know it, these guys are going to get back. So these wins are huge. And I think it's, as I always love to say, an opportunity for the other guys to be able to get some minutes, stake their claim, and I think a few definitely did today.
John, in terms of concentration, our old friend Darwin Núñez, he seems to fill his brain with fizzy ginger ale before every single game sometimes. Capable of the absolute magnificent, and then incapable of the basics, it seems at times. Is the bad part of his game worth the running around and the chaos and all that, or are we right to expect more in front of goal?
Oh yes, we're definitely right. And at that point, when he almost scored that own goal, all I could do is just laugh. Like if that went in, that would just be Darwin Nunez in a nutshell. What a header that would have been if that went in. And I would be marking the Friday show for this week in my calendar as a must appear if Darwin Nunez scored that header.
He put his whole head behind it and everything.
Right,
He's just like normally you try to flip that back, or at least you soften the speed of the ball.
Right.
No, he went hard. He missed just close.
Yeah. It's to answer Maka's question, it's definitely a valid point. Like right now, we're getting away with it because we're winning, right? But if the results aren't going our way, all these chances, they're going to be magnified tenfold. So for me, it's like right now, we got away with it. Right? Yeah. We do have our back and forths in the morning show, right, Tim, with Nunez and everything, to be fair. Although we do have Anan over there on the other side who balances it out massively. Like this is the criticism and this is Anan's praise. Like it's not even it's past the
doing the
cameras.
Lord's work for Nunez.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if there's one guy in American Scouts that I would back, if Nunez literally murders someone, I'd still think Anan would find a way to plead
Anan would be a fake alibi as well.
Right. But yeah, at some point you have to ask, when is he going to start burying these? We got away with it now, right? We got away with it now, but at some point he has to start. It's just simple, plain and simple. You have to score.
Just to stay on the mentality team and a little bit more on Nunez before we leave him alone. Let's just say, because I mentioned it in the Discord channel, which everybody should be signed up to and contributing to, because it's a good laugh most of the time, essentially, and usually at my expense. But I mentioned Mario Balotelli in a completely unrelated little joke, wise guy kind of voice crack. But Balotelli, when he was missing similar types of situations and shots under Brendan Rodgers, was not doing any of the other things.
Yes.
At least with Nunez, isn't it correct to say he is a workhorse? He does put himself about, not always intelligently and to the benefit of the team overall, but he never slacks off, does he?
I think, that's a huge difference. Like when you mentioned that, I mean, it's a huge difference in terms of, like with a player like Balotelli, and there are other strikers like that. If they're not scoring, they're absolutely doing nothing. So they better capitalize on every chance they get and they score. With Nunez, yes, you're getting a lot of the off-the-ball stuff. You're getting a lot of work, and you're getting a lot of hustle. Not always contributing in a positive way, but I would argue that some of those create stuff for others. I think there's like a thing of overthinking going on still. And, I was extremely happy with Diaz's goal as well, because I see the same thing with them. And I even said in the Discord channel, it's almost like when they're going with the ball, and there's that two-on-one that, Nunez is going with, you can almost hear the two hamsters running in their heads, as fast as possible, trying to figure out what to do. There's almost overthinking going on instead of doing just the basics. In that one, I feel like Nunez actually sends the right pass. Diaz should probably slow himself down because there's nobody in front of him. It's not like somebody's chasing Diaz out. I think he does the right pass. But you see that a couple of times from Diaz as well. It almost feels like because they're overthinking, they do a wrong pass. I see the same thing with Nunez. But the thing is, we keep saying, okay, it's going to break through. It's going to break through. I think Klopp is happy with the contributions he's making.
Right.
Otherwise, he would not be starting, right? They're seeing something, as they say in the American football, they see something on tape that, he's creating for others and he's doing what is asked of him. But at the same time, you do have to get some production because
he's one of those, it doesn't show up in the stat sheet.
Yeah.
Kind of guys.
But, when we talked before, right, when Bobby was here,
yeah.
And people always were like, he's a forward, he should be scoring and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, we're like, no, that's not, necessarily what he does. Look at all that he creates for others. So he doesn't necessarily have to score all the time, but he's going to have more of these moments where maybe he earns the foul or he makes a run that opens somebody else and stuff. I really want to see more of him. When I criticize Nunez, it's not, oh, how did he miss that and stuff like that. That shit can happen. It's a matter of sometimes the not thinking, like kicking the ball afterwards, getting stupid yellows, getting stupid fouls and stuff like that. That's the stuff that bugs me more. Any forward is going to miss. And eventually when they start going in, I'm sure it'll be great.
I just on the news earpiece, apparently some sort of miracle has happened, and Lego is dispensing water because Mikel Arteta is apparently crying out according to James.
Waterproof, so there's nothing's going to happen. He can be soaked in tears, and it'll be good as new tomorrow. That's
true. That is true. Now, just to stay again on the mentality idea, but move away from Nunez to a man who is just all mentality. He comes off the bench quite regularly these days, and he still puts in 100%, and he still makes vital contributions. Jota is just a fantastic person to be able to bring on in a game like that, isn't he? Especially with the kids coming on as well, to say, let's get back to basics, just keep it simple, slow it down when we have to, and then let's see what happens. Because when he came on, John, he did make things happen, didn't he?
Yeah, he's a very smart footballer. Like, if Nunez had half the brain Jota has, he'd immediately be a world-class footballer. And he just knows what to do. Like, I didn't see Saliba break a sweat when he had Nunez on his side of the field towards the end of the first half and the second half. But then when Jota came in, Saliba got booked. He had trouble holding him back because that's a smart player. He knows what to do with the ball. And, right now with Mo gone, he's definitely going to be our primary source of goals and creativity towards the front line. And I've been banging on the Jota drum the longest time in the morning show. I think he's a starter.
That's why he keeps getting injured, John. Stop banging on his drum.
Hey now. I would say, like I posted on the writers chat yesterday, the whole John Jinx thing is a massive exaggeration. Let me just bring that out.
Is it though? Is it?
Yeah. It's kind of like the myth, Tim, where Henderson only passes backwards and sideways. But we all know that's not the truth. Come on. Like, I jinxed Szoboszlai.
But we also know you'll jinx people.
I only jinxed Szoboszlai. That's it. Like, no one else. Like, oh yeah, granted, on the subject of Jota, he's definitely going to be massive over the next 2 months with Mo missing. Our best scorer after him, I would say. And like I said, his intelligence, he just gets in those positions. He frees up the space for Nunez and Diaz, exemplified by that pass towards the end. Like, none of our forwards were making that simple ball. And Jota comes in and he's like, okay, this is how you do it, guys. And Diaz scores. Like, what the hell? And Jamie puts it here. He's just direct. Yeah, he just scores, or he just makes the pass that leads to a score. And sometimes that's all we need, right?
I think the biggest thing with Jota is he's harder to defend because he's a lot more unpredictable.
Yeah.
Compared to like Nunez and even to a certain extent like Gakpo and stuff like that. Jota has that thing where you don't know what the heck is going to do, because sometimes he can just take you on the dribble and take you and grab you into the box. Sometimes he can kind of turn around, and he moves a lot more as well. So he moves center backs around a lot more. So I think he brings a lot of movements that creates space for people around him. And yeah, like Brian says, when he gets the opportunity, I mean, that header is not, we've seen all game 3-4 different headers that were a lot easier, not even get on targets. And he gets that, and he almost
all three were from Darwin, I think.
Yes, Darwin. I mean, by the way, we could have Kai Havertz could have been wearing a purple jersey and would probably get a better rating on SofaScore than he is going to wearing a white jersey. He was brutal.
Yeah, he was. On the subject of Jota, though, guys, you saw him start in the middle when he came on. Do you guys see him better as a false nine, or maybe on the left where he's mostly played in? Because obviously Klopp is going to be mixing and matching the lineups a little bit without Mo right now. So where do you guys see is his best position over the next few games?
I think for Jota, it's probably just you have to give him freedom, almost like Bobby Firmino. You just have to let him go where he thinks he needs to go, and then make sure everybody knows how to float around him. Because if he plays with Salah, he's smart enough not to go into Salah's space. But he doesn't also crowd the midfield. Like, he really is an intelligent. I hate to say it, but he's kind of like Adam Lallana, but with more talent. Like, Lallana wasn't the best player at any point during his time at Liverpool by any stretch, but he was clever, and he just couldn't do the technical things that Jota can do. He couldn't do the goal scoring, and he wasn't as physical. But he knows where to be and not to be. And I think if you put him on the left or in the middle, he's just going to flow anyway. So as long as the rest of your players know to get out of his way, I think he's going to be productive all the time.
And I think that's why I like Nunez better on the left because of that. Because I think the way we play, you do need somebody smarter to take advantage of spacing in the middle. So Jota is that kind of guy that will find the pockets of space to either run into or to sit in and wait for the ball, or, let others run into by making a movement and making that space bigger. So I think he's a lot more valuable in the middle. I hope he stays more in the middle, but unfortunately, in most cases, we've seen him come in on the left and Nunez staying in the center. What we saw in the second half, I mean, I don't know what you think, Mecca, but it almost like gave the sense, the way we changed how we did the front three, it's almost like Klopp and them are still trying to figure out no-mo situation in terms of like how we line up top. Because the right side was always figured out. Now you got to kind of figure out what to do on the right.
I think that's a good point in the sense that we talked beforehand whether Elliott would be in the midfield and Gakpo would be out on the right, but they put Elliott on the right. So essentially they were trying to recreate the left-footed winger that Salah is to come in off the right side on his left foot. But it didn't quite work out. Although I don't think Elliott had a bad game by any stretch, but he's not Mo Salah. That's the difference. He doesn't terrify defenders the way Mo Salah. Yeah. If Mo Salah looks up, everybody craps their pants on the other team. He doesn't even have to have the ball. He just has to look at the space on the field and they go, come on. We just did this run 10 minutes ago. So I think they tried to recreate it and it didn't work. So they flipped it around and it seemed to work a lot better in the second half because there was a lot more mobility, I think. And that might be the way to go, is just to not give the front three set positions per se, except I agree with you, Nunez on the left. Because if we talk about his inability to think and the two hamsters running the wheels, that will actually give him a direction. So they only have to run in one direction, the hamsters. They don't have to fight each other to go forwards and backwards at the same time. I think that trying not to recreate the Mo Salah front three would be the best way forward.
And I think the biggest difference today, like when you look at Gakpo in midfield, I don't think that worked very well, mainly due to when we used Gakpo in midfield before, he was on the opposite side. So now when he's on this side, because Szoboszlai was on this side, he was where Jones was, because I think Jones was out at the time. So a lot more effective there. I felt like on the right-hand side, with no top speed up top with Elliott, and then you have Gakpo there, and then you have Trent there. I mean, we were leaking because Gakpo does not really track the runs as much. Well, we know Trent does not as much. So that right side was like really, really hurting in the beginning. I think we were kind of like, I was kind of glad Martinelli was not in the game at that time where we had that lineup, because I thought the second half we did a lot better and there was a lot more like defensive help once Diaz got to that side as well.
Yeah, I think Diaz on the right. I believe I've been, not to use the term again, banging the drum on Diaz on the right side, because I feel like his speed can be a difference maker there. Like, obviously, he's best when he's cutting into that right foot, right, and taking on defenders, but that hasn't been an outright strength of his this year. So maybe a positional change might be the way to go. Like, Mane played at the right side of Jurgen Klopp's team early on. So maybe I'm seeing kind of like a transition for him there as long as Mo's gone, maybe. I mean, he wasn't half bad today. Like, he made the runs. He was an actual threat compared to Elliott, who was better in midfield. So I think that's a viable option moving forward. And I think Brian says it here, Sobo on the right. It's actually a decent shout as well. I don't know what you guys think about that compared to like a Diaz maybe or an Elliott.
I think Sobo needs a spell on the sidelines for a little bit. He's been going downhill steadily, so it might not matter which position you put him in. I think he needs a reset mentally. But just because we're talking about him so much, Diaz, in terms of mentality, at the 94th, 95th minute, still going forward and gets that goal that seals the deal for everybody. That guy was still sprinting as if we were losing 1-0 and needed an equaliser. He's gone through a lot this year. It's possibly hardened him a little bit mentally, as trauma tends to do for people. I'm sure he's getting all the best support you can possibly get psychologically. But Temujin, if we talk about players that the younger guys can look up to and say, that's how it's supposed to be done, no matter what form he's in, Diaz always gives you something right up till the time he gets taken off the field.
Yeah, that's like the weird thing with Diaz, right? Because there's so much try and so much effort. Sometimes, even when it's extremely poor and non-productive, it's hard to say, like hard to criticize, because you're looking at the front three and you're like, well, he looks like he's the only one trying. The only thing I'm torn about is, does that sometimes hinder the other two, where you almost like he's over trying certain things? But in terms of work rates and like defensive work rates, I definitely agree. I think, and that's what was the biggest difference I thought in the second half, is him tracking back a lot more and kind of like helping build up. I don't know why we did this, knowing Van Dijk is not there. There was almost like no midfields, and it was like the center backs trying to build from the back, and that's it. 2 center backs and Ellie. That's all you guys get. It's kind of an ordeal. And so like they were forced to do long balls. Gomez lost the ball a few times. I know Kwanzaa lost the ball a few times. So I think Diaz being on the right hand side, he's a lot more willing to come back and get the ball and do something with it there. So I agree with John. I know I've said this before in terms of Szoboszlai going on the right wing as well, that that's a good option to have. But I think that's more down the road, because he does have more top speed compared to Elliott. But in terms of work rates, you can't argue with what Diaz brings. And I think that goal hopefully will do wonders for him, because I think like he's been close so many times. And sometimes a player just needs to get that one to get like more and more and more. But yeah, he's been probably, when you look overall, even though, like I say, there are so many counters he has wasted with poor decision making and stuff like that, but the efforts is always there.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. We have the semi-final first leg against Fulham coming up. What does a game like this, John, do to your team, to you as a player, to know that you've come through an away game, first round that you're playing in the FA Cup, against a title and cup rival, and who blasted you for 85 minutes of a game, and then for 5 minutes of it you get some luck and you get some good counter-attacking. Going into that game, you must feel like the world is your oyster, essentially.
Yeah, the wind is definitely on our sails right now, and like I definitely expect Klopp to start a pretty strong team, considering he took out Elliott, he took out Jones, he took out McAllister. So I feel like we're going to get kind of a similar deal in terms of lineup. The front three is going to be interesting, mind you, but in terms of like the mentality on the team, like obviously we keep harping on mentality monsters, mentality. It's not a gimmick. It's true. Like these guys, they don't know when to quit. Like last year was kind of an off year for them, with the legs being gone and everything like that. And that's understandable because we reached the natural end of a cycle with the team. Now we have new guys coming in, like with a renewed vigor. Klopp himself admitted that he's kind of refreshed and everything. So that, and seeing your manager like be really open with that and be back again with the enthusiasm that he showed in previous years, really it gives a bit of wind on your sails. So I completely understand why everyone now it's just positive vibes. You could see it in the training, you could see it on the pitch. So definitely coming into Wednesday's game with supreme confidence, looking to get it done on the first leg. Like if I'm not mistaken, the first leg's at Anfield, right?
Yes.
I totally expect us to come out like we did against Newcastle, where the press was just a monster press. They're trying to get as much goals as we can, because this is the kind of result that just really boosts your confidence over the top, I would say.
To mention just kind of one last kick in the backside for Arsenal there. Sometimes in teams' seasons, there's a watershed moment where so much hope and excitement is dashed on the rocks, and then the season heads for a downfall, more or less, for the rest of it. Is this going to be a damaging result for those Arsenal players, knowing that their manager couldn't pull anything out of the fire to get that team across the line against essentially a second team of kids?
That's the problem, right? When you look looked on paper, I haven't had a chance to make fun of Alan yet, who's on our panel show every Wednesday representing Arsenal. I mean, when you look on paper, I think as an Arsenal fan, you're home, you're playing against, yeah, I mean, I know they're missing players as well, but when you look at what you're missing, you're missing one of the best players in the world in Mo. You're missing one of the best defenders in the world in Van Dijk. You're missing the spine like you just established in the midfield for the most part with Ando and Szoboszlai not there. And really, when we made that substitution, what was that, like 75th minute or so, where we put the two kids in, I thought that was like a statement by Klopp saying, you know what, we get it in our way. If we don't, we don't.
Yeah.
And we talked about it before in the pre-match. Like, nobody wants to draw this game. Everyone to win it. And to win with those kids in there. And honestly, we looked better. We looked a better team. I know as like Liverpool fans, it's 1-0 because so every time the ball is crossed, then we're like, ugh. But still, overall in gameplay, we were the better team the last 20, 25 minutes with kids in there. That is a huge, huge boost. And I think going into the Fulham game, yeah, you will see more of that. I think, this month is key in just getting the results. Play be damned. But this was still an Arsenal team. I know they're reeling, and this is going to be a huge blow because they're out of one more competition now. And I think most Arsenal fans probably see themselves going downhill. The only saving grace for the Mecca, I think, is the fact that we're in January. So they might have some hope in terms of like, if we just add that one piece kind of thing. Because I think if this was beginning of February and we were talking the same thing, it would be season over.
Let me start with you, John, and we'll go to Timuchin as well. We've got through this round. We're in the draw for the next round, John. Given the excitement of the win and how, smash and grabs are always exhilarating. I'll take those in that kind of situation where you're pummeled for like 60, 70 minutes. I would take a smash and grab and enjoy it immensely. But do you now feel, no, let's go and win this thing? We've eliminated one of our rivals, or are you still of the mentality, or would you be of the mentality that, we get to the next round. If we win it, we win it. If we lose it, it's freed up the schedule.
Right, that's exactly how I'm going to be. Like, kind of how Tim said, like, obviously we want our team to win every single thing possible. But if we're looking at the road, it's still a long-ass road. Right. So for me, whatever happens. We're in the semifinal of a cup competition, in the League Cup. So that I think kind of is a priority in terms of where we want to be in. We're in the quarterfinals of the round of 16 of the Europa League, and we're fancy to win the competition. So that's a bit more soon. Sparky put it there perfectly. Just take it round by round. So whoever we get, I'll be like, yeah, all right, we'll see what happens. If we lose, we're out. But obviously, priorities elsewhere in terms of like the competitions where we're a bit farther into.
Timuchin, where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I agree with the round by round thing. I think we do what we do, and then if it works out, it works out. I think that substitution, like I say, of the kids just says that for this entire tournament of how Klopp is approaching it. Like, we're going to manage the big picture and focus on that. If we're able to win with while we're doing that, all fine. But we're not going to alter the big picture plans just for the FA Cup, which I agree to.
And just on that final note, though, it kind of, to me, it was a little bit telling how Klopp celebrated after it, because he celebrated like we won the final almost. But I'm just wondering if that was maybe just because of the nature of the game, rather than the wanting to get into the next round and win the whole thing. But it remains to be seen, round by round, as we say. Before we go, it's really important that everybody understands that if you follow us on YouTube and if you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, formerly known as X, you will get all the goodies. All the handsome guys on the Thursday Night Podcast, all the not so handsome ones on all the other podcasts. The handsome baldies, let's put it that way, and Trevor. But we have
I note that Mecca does not know what the word handsome means.
I have a different dictionary to everybody else. We have our morning coffee tomorrow. The gang's all back, I believe.
Yes,
tomorrow, back. Coffee. So make sure you're on board for that. And then an in-depth discussion of the game, I'm sure, tomorrow night, among other things, at the Monday podcast. And then we have all of the goodies, like 5 days a week, 7 days a week, if we could get away with it. We have content for you that is incomparable, I think, in the LFC podcasting universe. So make sure you're on board with all of it. Just remains to say, if you're snow shoveling like I'm about to go back to, be careful. Don't do the back or the heart in, or just phone the guy to fix your snowblower the week before the snowstorm is supposed to come. Like I didn't. But,
so that's why the wifey is making you do it, I gather, huh?
Essentially, yes. But that's why I'm so grateful to Jurgen Klopp. I'll at least be doing it with a smile on my face.
Right.
I'm thinking of all the Arsenal people I can annoy on Facebook. But for everybody else, make sure you have a good evening. Enjoy that win. It was a pleasant, entertaining one overall. But if you're awake tomorrow morning, if you're drinking your reckless coffee early on to get you set for the day, join the morning coffee show, because that's where the good stuff happens. Where people are awake and not asleep. Like
barely, but yes.
So it just remains to be said, as we always do when I'm hosting, have a good evening. Peace out. Here's the 70s porn music.